these fitness influencers, like one of my biggest gripes is they try to make it super sexy and like over the top. And it's like, no, it's just fucking boring. And it's just doing it when you don't want to, doing it when you're tired, not sleep deprived, but doing it when you don't feel like it, right? Like doing it when you're not having a good day, doing it on your fun day, just do it. And I think so many people struggle with that, the consistency part. And that has to be a huge part of the goal. It can't be just the end state. It's got to be all the steps that you will take to get there. Welcome to the Plates and PRs Podcast.
We're here to provide you with expert insights and actionable tips to boost your training and cultivate a healthy relationship with food for peak performance and overall wellness.
Get ready to lift, learn, and exceed your limits.
Let's go. Hi, folks. Welcome back. This is Kat.
And I'm Christina, and welcome to Plates and PRs. We are back.
Yes, we are continuing. We have the kind of foundation set. We spoke about just really helpful approaches to nutrition when we're talking about basics of peak performance. Of course, that's going to look different for everybody, but just kind of the essentials to think about, especially if you're not already working with a nutrition coach and kind of making those goals and those action plans. So we're taking it a step further today and moving it to what part of our name is. So PRs, personal records, personal bests, whatever you want to call them, but approaching those, setting and smashing your PR.
Yeah, just a little go off on a tangent, but I promise it has everything to do with the PRs. It's the final day of like the Olympics. And if you've been watching it at all, I think it just has been a huge testament to seeing what performance and like peak performance looks like across a broad spectrum of sports and the bodies that perform in those sports. And it's been so cool to see. This is the first Olympics that's had gender parity like ever. So it's equal amount of men and women represented at the Olympics right now. And then we're just seeing this huge like increase of how these women look. I remember being younger, and at least the Olympics I watched, they were very, very young, like teenagers typically.
Oh, yeah.
And they were all very small and very thin. And now the women are older and still smashing PRs and having personal bests. I mean, look at Simone Biles. She's almost 30. I think she's 27. There was actually an equestrian rider. I saw her. She was 61 at the Olympics.
Oh, I love that.
I know, like, it's just been so cool. A lot of the track runners are in their 30s. We saw one of the men's marathon runners for America was 37 years old. Like, just seeing the age difference, seeing them looking really well fed.
That's so different from like the 90s. But yeah, we grew up with
lifting. Like all these women talked about how they lifted weights and they did strength and conditioning. And then the big one too, how many of them talked about their mental health and taking care of their mental and emotional well-being, and prioritizing that. And I think you saw the testament to taking care of all those things and how that translated into, just a huge record of medals. I think the US ended with 127 medals, and no one's even close to that total number. And then I think we tied with China for 40 gold medals. So talking about plates and PRs, I think it's so cool that this Olympics, and I think we also got this kind of deep, in-depth, like getting to see the athletes, because a lot of them are very famous and popular on TikTok. They're popular on Instagram, and they kind of go and you get to see a little bit in their world about like how they train, how they eat. They're talking more about their mental health and how they talk to their therapist. And so, from TV stance, you would get this very curated like information about the athletes. And now these athletes are able to take their own likeness and well-being and tell us their story, how they want it to be told. So anyway, I just thought it was really cool. Like, we're talking about plates and PRs, and then to see the Olympics, the way it's kind of moved to this, these women are older, they're stronger, they're taking care of their mental health, and like just crushing it has been really cool.
I love that so much, that like you don't have to stop doing what you love at a high level with age.
Yeah. Like when they were talking about the lady on the equestrian, I don't know what the formal name is. It's where they jump. I think it's called Assege. I need to look it up. I'll look it up. But, and I probably won't even say it right, but they were talking about how many grandbabies this lady has and like her train. And I was just like, that is so cool. She's in her 60s at the Olympics, jumping over like walls with her horse. Anyway, it was
There goes
phenomenal.
grandma.
Yeah, yeah, there's my grandma.
What a legacy that, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I love
So
that so
super
much.
cool. And I just think, yeah. So definitely a really cool. The last 2 weeks have been a lot of fun watching the Olympics and just seeing, because then you would watch them and then I would go find them on Instagram and like I want to hear their story and I want to see what they're all about. And then you just, I don't know, you love them even more after you hear their story and you know what pushes them and how they take care of themselves and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
So within the context or talking about PRs, and there's, I think we can also remember those PRs. Let's say like if you have an injury or something, getting back up to a level, you can also work towards those kind of PRs. You can have a different kind of situation where you're not chasing a specific, like, does that make sense? I don't know. I want to say
yeah,
that,
I definitely have post-injury PRs, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it's your old number, but it might be a number that you weren't sure you'd be able to hit again, or just shoot, for me, just mentally, every time I lifted heavier, I was like, that's a post-injury PR, right? Like I got to celebrate these wins.
Yep.
As you're moving through trying to get back to where you were. Yeah, those PRs, I think they, there's ebbs and flows with PRs as well, right? Like if you're an Olympian training, like it's 4 years of moving in a direction to hope you peak at just the right time. But those athletes, CrossFit athletes, if you're in any type of competitive sport, the goal is to strive and to get better. But those peak and those dip as you go through life. So maybe you have a baby or you get sick or you get hurt. And so you've got to readjust. And, I think if you're an athlete and you're competitive, the goal is always to PR, but that can look differently as you progress through life.
Absolutely. So that's what we're talking about today. Just ways of approaching that from the kind of coaching aspect of Christina's background and also then the nutrition aspect, which is also her background. So
So I know the first thing we wanted to talk about was like understanding what that means. So the PR in the context of functional fitness, right? If we're talking about CrossFit, is going to be, the benchmark workouts that have a name. It can also be obviously weightlifting, max reps of something, most weight lifted. Those are all things that we look at as PR. So if your run time was for a mile was 9 minutes, and then you ran a mile 6 months later after training and you got it down to an 8:30, that would be a personal record, right? The weight you lift, if you are trying to aim for max number of strict handstand push-ups. So in the context of that, that's what a personal record is. So I think there's a time and place to have goals for personal records, but I also think it depends on like what your goals are at all. So, on the flip side of that, I think of my dad. My dad has no aspirations of PRs. He's just happy to go to the gym, do the workout. You might convince him to add some weight, you might not, but he's still trending, like he ends up increasing weight and doing harder movements as we progress, but that's not his main goal. Like he wants to move and move well.
that's not what's like bringing him to the gym.
Exactly.
That's an added kind of.
He doesn't even think about PRs, and then on the flip side, if you've got someone who is very competitive, they like to compete, they have a big event coming up, PRs become more important. And I actually think it's funny, if you talk to your absolute top level athletes, they PR very little.
Yeah.
right? Like they're happy if they can do 90% for reps. Like it's funny how the PR and like the significance of that changes, because as you become a more fit, consistent lifter and more at the top of your game, the less and less you're going to PR because you're already at like your max potential, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the PRs come from wisdom of knowing when to throttle back and when to push. PRs come from cleaning up form and technique. PRs come from, can I do higher like volume at a higher percentage, right? Like, you know, yes, can I back squat 300 pounds? Yes, but I think what's more important, if you're a CrossFit athlete, can you do 85% for reps and still go tackle a workout and feel really good? So I think that PR kind of train, especially in CrossFit, that goalpost moves. Whereas if you're like a power lifter or a weightlifter, the PRs are important. But again, even those lifters, right? Like as they hit the top end of their strength, it's more like, can I hit these numbers consistently now and
Mm-hmm.
not just PR randomly?
And I think that if, just like with anything, you can push it to an unhealthy manner if you're just chasing that
Yeah,
and you're missing all of the other important things, like you were mentioning, doing 85% or
exactly.
90% for reps. And you can get to a place where you're hurting yourself always trying to PR. So that's also something to kind of keep in
Exactly.
mind too.
Yeah. And, you know, if you're a regular everyday CrossFitter and you're doing like the 1 hour of class a day, you're probably not following like a very periodized programming where you're going to, you know, if you're following like an actual weightlifting program, it's a periodized type program where, you know, week 1 you're doing this, week 2 you progress, week 3, week 4 you have a deload, and then you start back up again, you keep going, and then maybe 12, 16 weeks you go for a PR,
Mm-hmm.
right? And CrossFit, if you're sticking to the methodology of CrossFit, they don't really follow a periodized, right? It's a little more
Mm-hmm.
random. So if you're trying to really focus on getting strong, then it probably is beneficial to add a strength type element to your programming consistently. And I would say most CrossFit gyms do that. Most programming nowadays has a part A with the strength piece and B with a metcon, because you can have a workout that just has weights in it, which is fine, but for a lot of people they really do enjoy the gains of strength, and that comes best with the periodized new program, right? So
Mm-hmm.
just that's how it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As a coach, have you had, so let's say from the CrossFit perspective, if your gym, if your box is doing that, part A, part B, and following that, would you still encourage them to do an outside programming from, let's say, like WOD Prep or RP or another kind of programming for strength?
It's always going to be, it depends,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think it depends on, do you have the time for that? Are you eating adequately to support that type of training? Are you recovering well? What are your goals? If you are a novice athlete, I think doing part A, part B, and then if there was some skill work you wanted to work on, or something simple like zone 2 or maybe bodybuilding, that would probably be okay. Again, thinking about time and then what your goals are. If you're a more advanced athlete and the goal is to be competitive, then you're definitely gonna have to add some more volume and work to what you're doing. 1 hour a day is just not enough.
Mm-hmm.
However, I would caveat those novice athletes, they probably could do better off doing their hour of class and then taking a hard look at their nutrition if they don't feel like they're getting the results that they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a novice, you don't need a lot of stimulus to get a really good change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they call them newbie gains for a reason. Like those people put on muscle, they get stronger, like they're going to see some significant increase in their just, you know, stamina, endurance, strength just by coming if they've never been doing fitness before. normally what I tell people when you're not getting the results that you want, well, let's look at your nutrition. You probably don't need to add another hour of hard training. We probably just need to clean up the other 22 hours of what you're doing outside of the gym. So let's look at that. Like, are you sleeping enough and are you eating well? What's your stress level like? Can we work on those things that will help encourage a better result than you having to do hours of the gym?
It kind of reminds me of, what are those circular charts, spider charts?
The Venn diagram?
No, where they have just different, you can basically do an assessment of yourself of which area is like you're meeting the what you need to do. And so like sometimes you'll see like the training down here, like the like in a circle. I don't know what they're called, but
I think I know what you're talking
where
about.
one is
Is it
like all the
a
way close to
bullseye?
the very center, and then it's like nutrition's up there, like recovery is like right there, but everything else is like hitting. If you increase on this, you're still not hitting this area and bringing it out.
Gotcha. I vaguely know what you're talking about, but it makes me think of like a bullseye.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And you basically rate yourself on where you think you're at in all of them, right?
Yes. Yeah. So when I Google right now spider chart, it's popping up what I'm thinking of. So
Okay.
yeah, the goal is basically to get a circle, like a full circle, not just like a
Oh, got it.
kind
Okay.
of in and out.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay.
So when we are talking about goals, as far as like, or PRs, do you recommend people to go in with like a goal focused approach? For example, there's a kind of goal focused approach or goal approach of that, like SMART, the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound kind of thing. Is that how you as a trainer, as a CrossFit coach, would encourage people to do PRs, or does that look a little bit different?
That's a really good question. It's funny. I think if you would have asked me this question 5 or 10 years ago, I would have been like, write the number down. And now that I'm an older athlete, I think a lot about I'm trying to enjoy and focus on the process of getting there instead of focusing on the number, because a lot of the thing about sports is that 90% of the time you don't hit your fucking goals, right? Like there's a lot of failure in training, and it can be to the point where I've seen people like give up because they don't hit this specific number, right? I didn't hit this exact goal, therefore I'm a failure, but didn't look at all of the things they did to get from point A to point B. It wasn't a 400-pound back squat, but it was 350, and you were at 200 when you started, like, and so while I think having a set goal is absolutely, it is necessary for some people, it can be an absolute like deterrent when they don't hit the goal when they think they should. So do I think you should have like some big, hairy, audacious goal? I do. But I also realize that if you are the type that if you struggle with enjoying the process and you don't like enjoy the journey that training to get you there takes you on, you're going to be disappointed if you fall short instead of looking at what you're doing to get to that point. Does that make sense?
I think we can see that in other areas too, with like nutrition, especially for more of like body composition goals and things of that
Yes.
nature, that you just kind of quit.
And I'll have a lot of athletes that they want a very specific weight. And I try to ask, like, why do you want that weight? What does that weight mean to you? I want to weigh 135. Well, why do you want to weigh 135? What is that? What's going to happen at 135?
Right.
And then they can't tell me what they think will happen. And I go, but then we talk about, well, what are your goals? Well, I want to get stronger in CrossFit. What if stronger means you got to weigh 140?
Yeah.
What if at 135 you feel like shit and you can't lift as heavy? Which one are you taking? And 9 times out of 10, they tell me I'll take the 140, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I also try to explain to them that 140 looks different when you're strong and you're working towards something versus 140 if you're not doing anything, right? Like trying to get them to change their mindset about having this very fixed number when I don't know, there's no good, bad, or indifferent to that number. You don't know why you have it. It was just the number you weighed your senior year of high school, and that's what you want to be again
I
for
was
some
about to say
reason.
that again. And you want to be your college weight, which as a
Yeah,
side kind of rant, we are supposed to change. Our bodies are supposed to
right.
change. Like even if you look
Nothing
at
else stays
men,
the
like a
same.
30-year-old man should not look like a college.
18-year-old man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's not
Yeah, nothing
physiology.
else in life we would like attribute that needs to stay the same, right? Like
Yeah.
we wouldn't say anything else needs to look the same from 20 years ago or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And yet somehow you think you're still supposed to fit into the jeans you bought at Aeropostale in 12th grade.
Yeah. No.
Throw them jeans away, girl.
Right.
Throw
No.
them away.
Yeah. Throw them. Yeah. Donate them. Get rid of them. Yeah.
So for effective goal setting, I think you've got to take a couple things into consideration. And the biggest one is, what does your life allow for you to do? I think we need to be realistic about what that looks like for us. Most of us are not athletes full time. We get maybe a couple hours a day to train.
If that
So what
for some it's just 1 hour, right?
Yeah, for some it's just maybe it's less than an
Yeah.
hour. Maybe it's
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
I go in the garage, I do my street parking for 30, 40 minutes, and
Mhm.
then I'm done for the day, right? Like that. And maybe I take my kids for a walk or walk my dogs or something, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so I think you have to be realistic about what you're able to do. And then I think a huge part of it is just knowing it's consistent, boring work. These fitness influencers, like one of my biggest gripes is they try to make it super sexy and like over the top. And it's like, no, it's just fucking boring. And it's just doing it when you don't want to, doing it when you're tired, not sleep deprived, but doing it when you don't feel like it, right? Like doing it when you're not having a good day, doing it on your fun day, just do it. And I think so many people struggle with that, the consistency part. And that has to be a huge part of the goal. It can't be just the end state, it's got to be all the steps that you will take to get there. And I think a lot of people, they're excited about the goal, but then they realize, oh, this goal takes a long time. Like fitness is that one thing that you can't skimp on, right? Like our whole society is based on life hacks and doing it quick and getting it done fast. And like fitness doesn't work that way ever. Right. And so just getting
For
people,
PRs, especially like
yeah. And so just getting people to realize that the goal is really just the first step and recognizing what it will take to get there. And it's a lifelong thing too, right? Like goals can change and what you want from your health and fitness can change, but like the whole like being healthy is a lifelong process. And that just takes consistent day in and day out work.
I think that goes really well into the next kind of area that we're talking about, which is just that preparation mentally.
Yeah.
Having that positive mindset in a non, and of course, with everything, you can bring it up to toxic positivity and all of that, but there is something to be said about having a positive approach, like a mental view of how you're seeing your training, and not whining at all of the movements in the WOD to your coach and be like, oh, I hate this, or I don't want to
Yeah.
do this kind of thing. Like, well, not with that attitude, you're not going to get a PR. That's important.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that. I had a huge mind shift change with running.
Mm.
I run a lot now, more than I probably have in, man, at least a decade and a half, probably. And there was one point I got up one morning and I was like just angry about it. And I had this mental shift. I was like, why are you mad about this? A year ago, you were crying that you couldn't do this, right? You came off your Achilles injury. You were mad you couldn't do all these things. And now you're mad that you can do them. And I was so like annoyed with myself about it. Like, Christina, you get to do this. No one made you do this. No one signed you up for this. This is what you chose and you wanted to do. be fucking happy you get to do it. And in that moment, it was just like a light flipped. And do I love running now? I don't. But I don't look at it with the contempt I had for it before.
Mm-hmm.
And then as another kind of segue on that, or caveat, I don't know how to say it. I'm a huge fan of Mops and Mo's. If you guys haven't listened to them on podcasts, they're really good. But I follow him on Instagram, and he's been swimming lately. And one of the things he put on his story was, I don't like doing things that I'm bad at in front of people. And that hit me so hard, because that is how I've always felt about running. Because people had this thought of me as this really good CrossFitter, and then I would shit the bed when there was a running workout. And so I was embarrassed. So I didn't want people to see me struggle, I didn't want to look bad running, because I knew I was bad. But I'm like, how am I going to get better if I never run?
Right.
And so now that I'm here in Nashville, I don't own the gym, I don't coach, I don't compete. There's no pressure that I need to be good. And it's like, I'm just running to run, and I am getting better, but no one's seeing it, right? Like, I run into people like when I'm outside running, but no one knows me, and they don't know me from Joe Schmo. And so it's funny that he said that, because I felt that same way. Like, I didn't want to look bad in front of people.
That's one of those things where that's several layers deep of like, why don't you want to do that? Kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it
That's
made me realize that I think there's a lot of people, that's why they don't want to come into CrossFit. I'll look bad, right? I don't want to start fitness. I don't want to go to the YMCA because I'll look bad, and I don't want people to see me struggle, right? And I feel that so deeply. So anyway, him putting that out there and being vulnerable, I was like, man, that's me. I even messaged him like, I feel this way about running. But it was just one of those moments like who cares? It's okay that I'm bad. Like, I'll get better if I keep trying. Like, so yeah, it was pretty profound. Those two things of, I get to do this. No one made you sign up for this. You signed up on your own. And then two, it's okay to look bad initially, right? Like, it's okay. Anytime you start something new, it's going to be messy in the beginning.
And the more that you get better at it, you're probably going to start liking it more.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And running just has a huge carryover. If you're a CrossFitter and you're an older CrossFitter too, that cardio has a huge effect. If you look at those top women, especially, their strength numbers are decent, but they have engines. They were all those marathon moms who now came over to CrossFit, and they've just got a huge aerobic base, and they can handle those Metcons so much better. And I think that's, why you see, if you interview a lot of those women who are in the top of their game in the masters in CrossFit, they're almost all like swimmers and runners.
Maybe I should start running.
No, for real. Huge carryover.
And one of the things for the podcast, what Christine and I were talking about a little bit earlier, was that running doesn't need to hurt. So
it doesn't. Yeah. Who would have guessed it? CrossFit will make you think you just need to suffer and die every time you do a workout. And now I'm actually following a running protocol, like actual 16-week training. And I would say 3 out of my 5 runs are on the easy side.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah,
is it like shorter runs and then long runs on the weekend? Yeah.
So the interval work is my absolute hardest day. That's when you're doing sprint work, essentially. It's not sprint for me, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Going very hard. And then typically it's like today I did 6 miles easy. I'm off tomorrow. Tuesday is, I think, 8 to 10 sets of 400-meter intervals with 90-second rest in between. And then Wednesday's another easy run day, I think just 2 to 3 miles. That Thursday I do a ruck. That'll be 10 miles. And then that Friday I'll do 1 mile intervals at a sustained pace. So it's uncomfortable, but it's not all out effort. And then Sunday again, I'll do 6 to 8 mile easy pace. So that's what it kind of looks like. So the idea is to build volume and then you do 1 or 2 days of kind of a more push pace.
Nice. Very,
So
very, that sounds really, I like the structure of that. And even completing something like that for someone who hasn't had that kind of running structure is a PR itself of getting through
exactly.
that.
Yeah. And it was nice to hear like, oh, like take the CrossFit out. You don't need to kill yourself every time you go run. Like that's actually not how you'll get better.
You don't need to have burning lungs while
No.
you're running every time.
Like, oh, running so much more enjoyable. I'm not like feeling like I'm gonna die every
Right.
time.
Ah, man, you're selling me on the idea. Yeah, right now I'm doing some additional a strength program on top
Okay.
of CrossFit, but maybe once I finish, I might
Okay.
do
Yeah,
it.
let me know how it goes.
Yep. As far as preparing mentally, was there anything else that you wanted to share with that?
I think the last thing I would share about the mental side of it, I've talked about failing a lot, but I like to bring it up because I also think we live in a society where perfection is viewed at like if you don't do it from start to finish, something's wrong.
Hmm.
And if you're new to this fitness journey or nutrition, or you're going to fail, you're going to mess up, you're going to not get it right sometimes, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you have lost your goal. Kat and I talk a lot about using those moments as opportunities to learn and then kind of go deeper. Like, why did this happen? Why do you feel like you fell apart or lost this or didn't get what you wanted? And try to use it as a way to learn about yourself and how to prevent the next time, instead of thinking of it as I'm a failure and I can't do this, right? So just recognizing that lifestyle change takes work. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a month. Shit, it might not even happen in a year.
Mm-hmm.
But if you keep trying and just keep making consistent effort over time, you will get there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's key to understanding really how to PR in life.
Wise words, just the importance of that consistency, the frequency, the intensity of the workouts, the programming, that side of thing. That consistency piece is so important. It's something that we talk about in like all areas, but for PRs, that is what needs to happen ultimately.
Yeah, and I think where CrossFit fits in, and even other, I think weightlifting. I've been to a weightlifting gym, like Olympic weightlifting gym. The camaraderie there is what helps with the consistency. If you like the people you're around when you work out, you're going to show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're around people that have the same goals as you, encourages you, those are all important parts too, right? Like a lot of people think they can do this on their own, and there are people out there that they don't need to be around anyone else to be successful. I will tell you, I'm not one of those people. I thrive being around positive, happy people that want to train and do things. I'll do it on my own when I need to, but I definitely thrive being in the presence of like-minded individuals who are going after, their goals. So I think that can also be helpful. So again, we talk about CrossFit a lot, but a lot of it is just that community piece and having just like-minded individuals that are going to be super encouraging to you as you start on your fitness journey, if this is new for you, or your nutrition journey. No one's going to pressure you. Like, I'll give you an example. This last weekend, Nashville had what's called the Tomato Festival.
Oh.
Okay, Kat, you actually would have really liked this.
Tell me more.
Okay, next year you have to come visit me during the Tomato Fest.
Yeah.
Actually, like this huge thing in East Nashville, and a husband and wife came up with it like 20 years ago, and they use it as the bringing fruits and veggies together. It's a uniter, not a divider.
Oh, I love that. That's so cute.
It is. It's so cute. So tomatoes everywhere. People are dressed up as tomatoes. They're wearing red. They're wearing it's super cute. They had a whole art gallery of people who submitted their art for the Tomato Festival. Like, really cool, actually. But like we're out there, and of course we ran into some CrossFitters, because if there's food and beer, there's going to be CrossFitters there. But like, I was not drinking, and no one gave me any shit for it, right? Like, it was, do you want anything to drink? I'll take a Diet Coke. Oh, okay. Like, no questions asked, nothing. And I will say out of all communities
Mhm.
that they have been the most understanding and not trying to like encourage you, like you can have one, why not
Yeah.
just no one does that,
Or extra
right?
desserts or something like that, pushing.
Exactly. Like if I want the dessert, yeah, no one's going to
Fine.
judge you for getting it and they
Right.
don't care. But if you also say, hey, I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
like stay dialed in,
Mm-hmm.
they're also like super encouraging with that too. Oh, good for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And they won't ask again, you know? And so just being around people that get it and are going to be rooting for you to be successful, I think is huge because I definitely have dealt with clients who had family or coworkers that were not as supportive and maybe
Mm-hmm.
even trying to sabotage in some ways,
Yeah.
like, you know, and so we do see that, right? So just being around people is going to help.
Yeah, that's hard. It's so hard. It that reminds me, and we've mentioned this kind of analogy. It's not ours. It's I forgot the psychologist who I believe it's a psychologist, but the rider, the elephant in the path, the
Oh
rider
yeah,
being the more logical kind of thinky side of things, the elephant being the emotional side of things, and the path being the environment. And the path is so important for the logical side of things, but also the emotional side of things and how they all play that role. And so the environments could be everything from an example of, setting your stuff out, the night before to go work out, something like super simple like that, or keeping like fresh cut veggies and fruits easy to grab. But that also includes those people around. And you can't always change them. Maybe you can in some cases,
yeah,
but the more that you can surround yourself with people who give you that supportive environment is so important
absolutely.
and more fun.
Yeah, it is 100%.
So as far as the practical training tips go, I think this is where would be the under recovery side of things, where that would fit in. Just making sure that you're taking that into consideration. I know you've spoken many times on it's more of an issue of under recovery versus like over training in
Right.
most cases.
Yeah. Just, you know, when you're training and doing that, you want to just make sure you're getting your sleep and you're trying to reduce stress as you can. I know that's not always possible, but
Yeah.
you know, where you can, it's okay to say no. Under recovery starts to play a role if you're just not sleeping and you're not eating enough to support the work that you're doing.
Which goes into the nutrition side of things.
Yep.
So last time we were talking about, the basics for performance outside of the gym, also inside of the gym, but you are not going to get PRs if you're not eating enough. If you're not eating enough total calories, if you're not eating enough protein for your muscles to build and recover, or if you're not eating enough carbohydrates to give you that energy. I
Yeah.
know this reminds me of Angie's red velvet cookies
Oh
that she
yeah.
would make and bring for you sometimes.
Yeah.
And we would see that like the sugar, the carbohydrates play a role in your performance.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep. I would always be like, I need you to bring those so I
Right.
can PR.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you do have questions just as a listener as to, the type or amount or anything like that, that's what we're here for as nutrition coaches to help with the application of all of the nutrition recommendations when it comes to sports, really looking at your goals and also your just environment situation to help make that as aligned as possible with those
Yeah.
sports recommendations.
Well, this has been a fun episode.
Ready to go set some PRs?
Yes. Some running PRs.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the one benefit when you run really slow, you PR pretty easy.
Yeah. And I mean, that you kind of reminded me of when was it? Was it the sub 4 minute mile
When
that,
that was thought that no one could do.
yeah. And then like after that, so many other people started doing that too. And so like that is also talking about the mindset. So much of PRs is in the mindset.
It is. That's such a good point because yeah, for a long time it was thought that we couldn't break that humans could not break the 4 minute mile. And like you said, the first person did it and then it was like a domino effect and all these other people got it.
Like
And
where
now
we're
we're like
at.
we're 35 seconds below it, you know,
Yeah.
like yeah, so it really is this mindset of oh, if they can do it, I can do it.
Mhm.
Or, you know, until no one thought it could be done until someone did it. And now all these other people are like, well, maybe I can do it too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
And we see that in
yeah,
CrossFit and with the weights. The
yep.
games years and years and years ago, they were nowhere near where they're at right now.
Yeah, I think about that with the women's Olympic lifting. I mean, like I said, the American who just won, she lifted 319 for a clean and jerk.
Whew.
I think it was 319 was her winning weight. And that was not heard of 50 years ago for women.
Yeah.
Like women weren't lifting that much.
I mean, I just want to make a time machine just for that reason.
Right? Yeah, it's cool to see what happens when mindset plays a huge, when you truly believe in yourself and you like give yourself the chance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like let's see what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Awesome. All right. Well, folks, if you have not rated this podcast, please do so that more people can find this and it just boosts their numbers a little bit.
Yep. Like and subscribe and reach out if you have any questions. We'll talk to you later.
Bye, y'all.
Let's go.
Bye.
Yeah, this is my life, my strife, my right to fight, to die on. And this is my game to play, to claim a brand new